if your foundation of health and your foundation of hormones and your foundation of metabolism isn't right, it's going to be very hard to get the most out of any kind of exercise or fat loss protocol. The calories burned portion is strongly influenced by a number of things that you can control that can greatly accelerate or increase the amount of adipose tissue or the proportion of adipose tissue that you burn in response to exercise and food. Neurons connect to your body fat and can change the probability that that body fat will be burned or not. And I'd probably come under a pretty considerable attack if I didn't just acknowledge up front a core truth of metabolic science and also of neuroscience, frankly, which is that calories in versus calories out, meaning how many calories you ingest versus how many calories you burn, is the fundamental and most important formula in this business of fat loss and weight management in general. There's simply no way around the fact that if you ingest far more calories than you burn, you're likely to gain weight. And a good portion of that weight is likely to be adipose tissue, fat. It's also true that if you ingest fewer calories than you burn, that you will lose weight and that a significant portion of that will come from body fat. What portion depends on a number of factors, but that simple formula is important. And indeed, there is evidence from, for instance, Robert Lustig, who's a pediatric endocrinologist at UC San Francisco, has talked about how highly processed foods change the way that we utilize food and can lead to higher incidences of obesity and other metabolic syndromes that go against the idea that a calorie is a calorie and that's it. So a calorie is a calorie as a unit of energy, and we need to accept and acknowledge this calories in, meaning calories ingested versus calories burned formula, but the calories burned portion is strongly influenced by a number of things that you can control that can greatly accelerate or increase the amount of adipose tissue or the proportion of adipose tissue that you burn in response to exercise and food. So your hormones are important. Your thermogenic milieu, meaning how warm or how cold your body is, how cold you make it, how warm you make it, but also your level of metabolism, your levels of thyroid hormone, and something that's hardly ever discussed, but is well supported by the scientific literature, how much innervation, meaning how much connectivity there is between your nervous system and fat. Your body fat of various kinds, and there are several kinds of body fat, are actually innervated by neurons. Neurons connect to your body fat and can change the probability that that body fat will be burned or not. So your nervous system is the master controller of this process, and it plays a strong role in the calories out, the calories burned component. I want to set the context correctly. If your foundation of health and your foundation of hormones and your foundation of metabolism isn't right, it's going to be very hard to get the most out of any kind of exercise or fat loss protocol. There are a couple bins, a couple items that you should make sure you're getting correctly. And if you're not perfect about these, don't worry about it. Most people are not perfect about them. I'm certainly not perfect about them. But we should all be striving to get quality and sufficient sleep. Get your sleep right. Get your light exposure right. Avoid bright light in your eyes at times you want to be asleep, and get bright light in your eyes at times you want to be awake. So get your sleep right. The other thing is essential fatty acids. We need fatty acids. They are vital to so many aspects of our health. You don't have to get them from supplements. You can if you want to, but you need to get them from your food. They are essential. There's a reason there's an E, the essential part there. Of the fatty acids, there are multiple kinds, but for the antidepressant effects, or the levels of fatty acids that will promote good mood and also healthy metabolism and will start to shift the needle in the right direction on blood-borne cardiovascular factors, the key thing is to get the levels of EPA that you ingest above 1,000 milligrams per day. So that doesn't mean just taking 1,000 milligrams or more of, say, fish oil or krill oil or whatever your preferred source is. It means getting above 1,000 milligrams of EPA, which may require that you ingest more essential fatty acids than just 1,000 milligrams per day. That, of course, can be done through food sources. things like fatty fish, or if you're not into eating fish, you have quality meats that are grass raised can do that. There are other sources of essential fatty acids, of course, also from plant sources. So look those up online. It's really easy to find, but the research in the literature shows that you want to get above 1,000 milligrams of EPA per day, because that's when you can best support your metabolism and position yourself for good fat loss. As well, for people who have cravings issues, that you have neurons in your gut that are craving, they're seeking essential fatty acids, and they're craving and seeking amino acids from your food. Now, these are not supplements that they crave per se. They're craving those things because that's what your body needs and your brain needs. But those same neurons will respond to sugars. And so many people who are craving sugar can satisfy that sugar craving by giving the neurons, so to speak, what they actually want, which are amino acids and essential fatty acids. That includes EPA, but also things like glutamine, an amino acid that can really reduce sugar cravings if you take a teaspoon of that or even a tablespoon of that a few times a day. You have to ease into that a little bit because some people can get a little bit of GI distress from too much glutamine, but glutamine has also been shown to improve symptoms of leaky gut. It's a powerful amino acid. And yes, you can also get it from food. Things like cottage cheese are high in glutamine, etc. And then finally, you can't really position yourself to have a strong metabolism if your iodine levels aren't correct and your thyroid levels aren't correct. You can overdo iodine, so you don't want to do that. A lot of table salt has iodine added to it, but some people need to add iodine by ingesting things like kelp, etc. But one of the best ways to support the thyroid system and metabolism in general is to make sure you're getting enough selenium, sometimes called selenium, each day. Simple way to do that is to ingest the highest concentration of selenium food that I'm aware of, which is Brazil nuts. 1 or 2 or 3 of those per day, you'll have more than enough selenium to meet the thyroid needs. You don't want your selenium to be too high. You don't want a diet too high in anything. So again, sleep, sufficient EPAs, glutamine if you have issues with leaky gut or sugar cravings can really help. Get your gut microbiome right. I may have missed saying that, but get your gut microbiome right. That does not necessarily mean you need to ingest probiotics. You can if you want to, but you can also just simply ingest a serving or 2 of fermented foods per day. That can greatly assist. So things like sauerkraut, kimchi, every culture has a different source or sources of fermented foods. Those can really help the gut microbiome. And then make sure that your thyroid hormone is supported through the ingestion of sufficient iodine, not too much, and sufficient selenium, not too much. Okay? Sleep, EPA, glutamine, fermented foods, iodine, selenium. That sets the basis for how things like exercise, cold, and some of the compounds that can really increase the burn factor in the equation of calories in versus calories burned.